Right.
on.
Okay. Right, so welcome. Okay, this is our March meeting it's a joint thing, the World Intellectual Wisdom Forum and the International Institute of Peace Studies and Global Philosophy. They both got their own histories, and IPSCIP is much older. You know, I've been running that since 91 at the University of London. The World Intellectual Wisdom Forum is much younger. It was started in 2017 in India. And people have, you know, we've met in person sometimes, but often now it has to be on Zoom. And there's a number of projects and things we're working on, which I'll be reporting on. Here in France, it's 9 o'clock, 9 p.m., so it's quite a reasonable time. And yes, the state of the world is kind of, well, we're poised, aren't we? It's Easter Saturday, which for some people might seem an odd time to meet, but I think it's a very good time. For Christians, it's the time when Christ is sort of symbolically in the underworld, harrowing hell. So according to the churches, Christ goes into the underworld and lets people out of hell during these precious hours. And then tomorrow morning is resurrected. So in churches all over the planet, they're celebrating that. I think harrowing hell is quite a good thing to do. It means taking pity on people that are stuck in a loop of despair and suffering and grief and pain and all that, you know, maybe inflicting it on each other. It's a sort of hell world. In the Buddhist language, hell is a state of mind. We create it through our own false ego desires and stuff. In philosophy, there isn't really a hell as such, although there are dark places you can go after death if you're not careful. Anyway, welcome to our Easter Saturday meeting for the World Intellectual Wisdom Forum and IPSCIP. Let's just go around. So I think I know everyone mostly. I'm Thomas Daffern, a philosopher and historian, and I like to cause good trouble to corrupt systems, and I've been doing it for years. And I'm a bit of a visionary. I want a world of peace. And I think, but we have to think strategically and absolutely, you know, realistically, with our feet on the ground, how we're going to do that. Okay, that's me. Sean, why don't you go next? You're on the on my screen at the top.
Fine. Good evening, Thomas and everyone. I'm based in Ireland here, so it's 8 o'clock in the evening, and that's not a bad time. It's Easter Saturday evening. My background is in peace studies, peace research, environmental activism, and I've been working with Thomas in various areas of conflict resolution and all that area back, you know, of research. So I'm here to listen and to contribute as much as I can. Thanks.
Greetings. And you've got a new Prime Minister. Has he been sworn in yet, or is he some new chap taking over?
No, here in Ireland he hasn't. He will be next week, but there won't be any major change in the direction of government. For, you know, he's very much centre right, which is the government we have at the moment.
Right. Interesting. Okay, well, let's discuss Ireland.
Yes, there's a future stage, because there is a big push to get Ireland into NATO. We're still a neutral country, but this present government is trying to undermine the neutrality. But that's another issue I'll come back to at some stage. Thanks.
Yeah. No, let's talk about that. That's important. Thanks, Sean. Okay, Amina, you're up next. Greetings, madam.
Hi there. Thank you, Thomas. Good to see you and everyone. Hello, everyone. Very nice to see you all again. I'm joining you all from San Francisco, California, and looking forward to our discussion today. And I really loved what you said, Thomas, earlier. You quoted John Lewis, making good trouble. So I actually have a T-shirt. I was thinking to go grab it and just or put it on. And since you started with that, I have a T-shirt that says "Good Trouble." And when we go to DC to lobby or advocate for the Department of Peace building legislation, sometimes we wear that T-shirt in congressional offices. So good way to start.
Okay, great. And Amina's involved with the Peace Alliance. Hopefully she'll tell us more about that a bit later. Some of you may have heard her talk a little while back. She gave us a half an hour roundup of what she's doing. So impressive stuff. Okay, Janet, welcome. Hello, madam.
Hello.
Tell us what you've been causing good
you.
trouble for ages, haven't you? Tell us about it.
Yes, well, I started as a dancer and choreographer, and part of most people don't think of dance as resistance, but if you're a woman, you know that was one way to get around that, you know, getting stuck being a wife. And, although, you know, later I learned to do that, and then I live in New York, and I worked with Betty Reardon for many years, since the Beijing Forum, and at Teachers College, I was the co-director of the Peace Education Center at Teachers College, which is ended. And I'm the education director of the International Institute on Peace Education. And I'm an artist, watercolorist, and mosaicist. And I think that is powerful. I've learned to think in ways that aren't typically schooling ways of how to cooperate, how to coordinate, and how to engage in creative, constructive conflict. So, and transformation.
Yeah, and you're going off to Nepal, aren't you, for your peace education thing?
That's right. In July, we'll have an International Institute in Peace Education in Nepal. It's residential learning community, a sort of intensive where everyone presents. So the program is built, that's my job, choreographing, mosaicizing the way that people are coordinated into the program. And about half the people are from the region and half from other places around the world. And so it's like, you know, the person at the plenary is then the person who's at the breakfast table with you, or in, you know, walking on some gravelly path to engage in some immersive activity and learning about the place we are. It takes place in different places each year. So
it's going to be amazing. Yeah, I'm going to pray for Santa to send me a ticket. It'd be wonderful. I'd love to go to Nepal. I've never been.
well,
but,
actually, it's closed now. You know?
Okay.
It's,
Okay.
yes, it's only 60 people, so everyone has a chance to engage with each
Sure.
other. But in the future,
Right.
in 2 years in Spain, that would be great. Thank you.
Well, I hope, Janet, a bit later, you can do a resume of the Betty Reardon homage that we did and tell us a bit more about her.
Yes.
That was an
Okay.
important event. Yeah.
I
Great.
was very pleased that you were there. You added a major contribution that launched instantly into a project. So
Right. No. I mean, she was a fine woman. So anyway, it's nice to have you here. And I've asked Janet to help with the Delphic Education Commission work that I'm doing as an artist, choreographer, and a peace educator. It's a great combination. And the Delphic Games, which I'm the educational coordinator for, we're trying to get knowledge about the Delphic Games in every school and university in the world to give hope, so that we don't go on throwing bombs at each other, and we do artistic musical contests, poetry readings, theatre, you know, dance. And so these Delphic Games, we're trying to rebirth them as important as the Olympic Games. And that's a big job. And, you know, anyone who wants to be involved is very welcome. We need all the artists we can get. It's exciting. Okay, right, let's move on. Shanti, I can see you now. Do introduce yourself. Welcome.
Namaste, everyone. Yeah, such an honor to be present with all this elite group, the intellectual group. My main mission is to create authentic yoga teachers, to create balance in their life, in their family, and in the world through authentic yogic lifestyle, where they understand the ancient science of yoga as a lifestyle and not as a fitness, the way it's misrepresented these days. Because even the yoga poses, it is only a very small part of the ancient yogic wisdom. But unfortunately, in the West, it's blown out of proportion, and it's made like almost yoga means yoga poses. It has come to that state. So I want to really change that way of training and that misrepresentation. So I was until 3 years back in the US. I temporarily relocated to India, Bharatam, for taking care of my mother who has dementia. I'm here just for 3 months back in the US just to be with my daughter who is still here. So that is where I am. And yeah, I have been meeting Thomas during the peace, the non-violence conference. I met him once in person 3 years back, met him again online during the same conference. And so that has
Yeah, I
put
hope.
me, all of you who are in the peace world.
Yeah. So thank you, Shanti. Yes, you gave an excellent talk at the last ICPNA meeting. Susan was there as well. So I hope you can do a little summary of that meeting for us, for those that weren't there, and maybe just give us a little bit of insight into what you talked about a bit later on. That'd be great. Be nice to hear from you. Okay, thank you. Homi, your turn. Welcome, sir. Nice to see you.
Thank you. Thank you, Thomas, and good afternoon, everyone. I was a little bit misled by the time differences which has taken place. In US, we are moved 1 day, 1 hour forward, whereas London has not. So I was at about 12 o'clock online, and then I realized that it is still 1 more hour to go. Anyway, I'm here. Thank you, Thomas, for inviting me, and good evening and namaste to everyone. Very pleased to be here. I represent Fazana and Interfaith Activities Committee. I'm a past president of Fazana. Fazana is the Federation of Zoroastrian Associations of North America. I represent Fazana at the Religions for Peace International World Council as a co-president. And we have been very many activities which are going on, but I'll tell you about a couple of recent activities. Fazana Interfaith Activities Committee cooperates very much with the Zoroastrian youth of North America. And we always keep on asking them whether any one of member would like to be involved in a particular activity, because youth is the one which is going to make changes for the future. And one of the youth member from Houston, who is still a school student and has been involved in community awareness for relationship violence, she asked us that they would be like to be involved in a presentation of teen dating violence becoming aware, because that's taking place in school and very much. So with the help of Fazana Interfaith Activities Committee, we made a presentation about, I think over a month ago, to the not only the community, but there are many people who came from outside on a Zoom meeting, and the presentation was made for young girls and schoolgirls and one young man from Houston area. They were involved in making that presentation and making it aware. Also preparing a kit for to be used by the parents, by the teachers, in how to identify the problems which are getting involved. As part of the Fazana UN NGO committee, Fazana is a UN-based and faith-based organization recognized by the United Nations. And in the last CSW meeting, which took place this month, actually, early part of this month, Fazana made a presentation at the CSW meeting in New York, and it was empowering. Our team was focused on innovation and technological change and education in the digital age for achieving gender equity and empowerment of all women and girls. And it went on very well. Large number of people came. We also participated in an exhibition on the following day. So I'm very proud about what we are doing.
Great, great. And just for those of us that don't know the acronym, CSW stands for?
Commission on Status of Women, which is a United Nations activity which takes place every year in the month of March, coinciding with International Women's Day.
Okay, yeah. And I think the homage to Betty Reardon was in parallel to that as well. So yeah,
Correct.
it was International Women's Day, so that's good.
Yeah.
Okay, well, I want to ask just Homi, I noted that the Secretary General of the World of Religions for Peace has just changed. We did have briefly this academic from Holland, and now we seem to have someone from Africa. Were you involved? Do you know why they've?
You forgot me.
Why? Sorry, I'm just asking why.
Oh,
why?
okay.
What happened there?
Okay.
But
Sorry,
maybe.
Sorry, I didn't get a question, Thomas.
Okay, I'll come back to it, Homi. Let's finish with the introductions, and then we can go back to that
All right.
because we haven't heard from the others.
Okay,
So,
go ahead.
Sam Petroda, you seem to be next on my screen. Could you introduce yourself?
I can try.
Hello, welcome.
Thank you, Thomas. I'm Sam Petroda. I'm in Chicago, Illinois.
Hmm.
I'm an engineer, telecom engineer. Sort of dabble in too many things. I've just written 2 books, and that's how Thomas and I got connected. One is called Redesign the World. I don't know whether you can see it.
Yeah.
Okay. And the other one, which just came out this week, is The Idea of Democracy.
Hmm.
Okay. So Thomas wrote a little blurb on the book on Idea of Democracy. Thank you, Thomas.
You're
And
welcome.
it's published. I'm busy right now with Indian elections, very concerned about democracy world over. I'm concerned about democracy in the US and in India in particular. And I see some serious challenges.
Yeah.
Thank you.
Well, that's what we're here to discuss. And Sam has helped create this independent monitoring panel on the Indian elections, which I'm sitting on, and we're producing reports and monitoring it all. But he's an eminence grise. He likes to stay out of the limelight. And then he pushes me forward like a little foot soldier to take the flak. So if Modi's going to send a hit squad, they're going to get.
You look more civilized than I look.
I don't know. Anyway, I'm doing my best with that group. It's important.
Thank
So
you. Thank you.
thank you for that. And yes, when it comes to Trump and America's democracy, there are also concerns, aren't there? Obviously.
Very, very serious.
Yeah, yeah. Okay, Susan, can we hear from you, please, madam?
Yeah, it's amazing. I can relate to all of you. Social worker, Department of Peace. Hi. I went to Washington, D.C. with Dennis Kucinich when he presented that bill and visited and Marianne Williamson. I've been protesting since the Vietnam War. I just did a presentation on Ireland. I just spoke at a Jane conference, and Homi, I'm sure you know the Zoroastrian, I can never say that word.
Zoroastrian, yeah.
Zoroastrian person, Manic. When I met him, I was talking about interfaith, and he came up to me and said he'd like to speak to the group I belong to. So he just did an excellent presentation on Zoroastrian this past week. Who else? And I just got back from India and heard a lot about Modi and the Muslims and all that's going on there with knocking down the mosque. And yeah, so boy, I can relate to all of you on some level. Institute of Peace also, I'm very much interested in the things they do and participate in the Wilson Center speeches. Okay.
Right. Yeah, Susan, thank you very much. Susan Seats, we've met several times in India, and she's been very active in interfaith peace work. Okay, look, so has everyone introduced themselves now? I think so. Oh, Elaine Mace, sorry, Elaine, do introduce yourself.
Yes. Hi. I'm Elaine Mace. I'm in New York. I'm a dear friend of Janet Gerson, or she is my dear friend, and invited me to come. I'm here to listen. I like Good Trouble too. I've been an activist since the Vietnam War and played a big part in resisting that war. I'm a member of Human Dignity and Humiliation Studies, headed up by Evelyn Lindler. And I'm honored to be here in your presence, such background you all have. So I'm here to listen. Thank you.
Oh, well, welcome, Elaine. Thank you very much. And yeah, we're all here to listen and to learn. So that's very important. And between us, there must be at least several hundred years of experience in peace activism. So we ought to be able to do something with all this, you know. That's the plan anyway. Okay, let's go. I did a sort of agenda thing. The first item on the agenda, which I sent round, is really this very important meeting honouring Betty Reardon and peace educators generally. Maybe I can ask Janet to speak to it because she was the co-chair. There were some amazing people speaking at it, including a woman from Afghanistan that moved me to tears, others. So tell us about the meeting, Janet, and tell us how you knew Betty and what she was doing.
Okay, well, first of all, the meeting was the Conference on Status of Women. So where did he go? Homie, we were in parallel events. It was and we've been involved. Well, Betty was involved. Betty Reardon was working with the UN NGO community before there really was a UN NGO community. And she was one of the people, along with Richard Falk and Sal Mendowitz and many other people, who worked to advocate non-governmental people to participate and lobby in the debates there. And so for years, and also Betty was very active in the, there were 4 global women's conferences from 1975 to 1995. That was the one that I got in just at the tail end. So she was working on sexism in the war system. She was working on comprehensive peace education. She was working on organizing teachers, and she was organizing through the UN to, for example, get Security Council Resolution 1325, a non-governmental organization resolution passed in the Security Council, the first one, that followed up on the Beijing conference in 1995 for the participation of women in all aspects of peace building, peacemaking, and prevention. And then the people who got that resolution passed have been using it as a tool. And that includes many of the women who were presenting, including Mavic Cabrera, who is the director of Women, Peace and Security, an NGO and global UN NGO consultative organization and a global organization. So everyone there who presented, there were about 7 or 8 of us, we have all met through Betty. We have all worked together for decades. And so from the most practical, most on the ground, Sakina Yakubi from Afghanistan, who since the 90s started educating women and girls in basements, in homes, and secretly, because it was against the law, you could be killed for doing this, and they would change locations and move. As things opened up a bit, she was bringing in grants from the World Bank and through the UN, organizing not only education for women and girls, but health clinics, and also all kinds of microfinancing and self-sustaining women's businesses. And she is incredibly brave, incredibly moving, totally focused, unfortunately in Michigan now. But she and Betty were the most recent activity of Betty, who died in November this past year, was to work with Sakina to get people out of Afghanistan, women and activists and students and girls who were in danger of basically being locked up at best and worse, being killed. And so that is continued, and they worked with Mary McFreeden, I think her name is, a Canadian senator who's very active in women and world community, and has been worked hand in hand with Betty and Sakina to help get women out from different positions, like in the UN, in the NGO community, in Afghanistan, across the, the Western world, where people might have money or places to give refuge to people who got out. So let's see. So I was working with Betty since 1996, and I became the co-director of the Peace Education at Teachers College in conjunction with Tony Jenkins. And we have been sponsoring. So Betty always believed that peace is not just a matter of government to government or the world powers or the wealthy elite. And she always organized through teachers associations. And she said, here, we privileged people, we can go to meetings like the International Peace Research Association, but most of the people are not in a position to fly and, spend money and go across the world. What can we do? And so the International Institute on Peace Education, which I'm the education director of, was conceived as a way to bring international people to local people, local women, local teachers, so that they could experience it. And it was really originally conceived as self-sustaining, in that we all work for free and volunteer our capacities and our engagement. And the international participants originally would pay a fee that was very low for internationals or global citizens, but enough to cover half of the scholarships. Half of the participants would get scholarships to participate from the local area. So there were more school teachers and local activists and that sort of thing. Finances have squished that project somewhat, but we still maintain the basic idea. And yes. Thank you.
It was thank you very much, Janet. I mean, I think that there was a recording made of that meeting, and I presume it'll be on your website, won't it?
Yes, and I think it'll be on YouTube.
Right. I'll send people a link. If you can send me the link, Janet, I will. Because we can't convey to you, it was like an hour and a half, very, very moving. I want to share just one little response to Janet briefly. Some of you know that I'm a passionate dictionary maker, etymologist. And so I have been writing about the origin of words. And I was researching this morning the Irish word for peace, which Sean can correct my pronunciation. It's something like Shochain. Shochain. Sean, can you correct me? Is that about right? I think. No, you've gone mute again, but
it's quite close, yeah. Shakon.
Okay, Shakon. Yeah. And anyway, it's a fascinating word with a deep history. And last night I had a dream. I was meditating in my sleep, as I often do. I've written a book arguing that Indo-European languages and Hamito-Semitic languages come from a common root, which is an unusual thing to argue, but I think it's time to end this split between the Hamitic-Semitic, i.e. Hebrew, Arabic, and other Semitic languages with the Indo-European. And I've argued there's lots of evidence for they must have been united further back in time, like 10,000 BC. And it suddenly struck me in my dream, right, my meditation, that the Arabic word for deep, deep peace is Shekinah. And that's the origin of the word for the goddess, the Shekinah in Hebrew, which comes in when you have your Sabbath and the woman lights the candles and the Shekinah arrives in the home. She's the goddess, right? And it's the same in Arabic. The Shekinah is a word in the Quran for the holy peace that descends on a Muslim when when they surrender to God, you know. And in my dream, it was shown to me that that comes from the same root as the Irish word. You know, like totally left field. But wouldn't that be amazing? Because in the Gaelic, we believe in the Druid Gaelic Irish community that Gaelic was invented by people wandering through the plain of Shinar before the Tower of Babel was built. And it contains the original speech of humanity. So I'm just throwing that out there. That's the level at which we have to do this deep peace building, I think, Janet. And anyway, you know, it's wonderful the work you've been doing. So thank you so much. Maybe we could ask.
I just want to add the Conference on the Status of Women that was built into the UN in 1942. And these women activists made it come alive. And these 4 conferences from 1975 to 95 united women across the world and led to all kinds of good trouble. Thank you.
Sure. No, absolutely. I mean, I should confess, my mother was a peace activist. I'm only here because I had a very, very feisty mother who was a peace activist since the 1930s. She didn't like the Spanish Civil War. That was what kicked her into action. And she was active for peace, you know, during the whole of World War II, the Cuban Missile Crisis, living in Montreal, where I was born, protesting nuclear war and the H-bombs, and then became a member of a CND, the Committee of CND, which some of you may know of, Committee of, you know, against nuclear weapons. If you haven't seen it, there's a very good Netflix documentary on the Cold War, very recent, just released, and it's covering in depth the whole of the history of the Cold War with footage. Last night I watched the episode on Cuba. It's, you know, really interesting, and they have really gripping and terrifying images of H-bomb tests. These weapons are unbelievably powerful, you know, and there's still fallout going on. So anyway, Homi, before you go, I know you've got another meeting. Can you tell us, I mean, one thing I wanted to report back on is the Commonwealth Interfaith Network. We had a good little meeting with some people from different Commonwealth faith communities, Christians and Muslims and so on, and Sikh, but nobody from the Zoroastrian faith. Homi, can you tell us, in the Commonwealth countries, there are quite a lot of Zoroastrians, aren't there? Do you know of any?
Sure. The Commonwealth comprises of India and Pakistan, which has got the same population, besides Canada also. So I don't know how I missed that particular event. I missed the ICPNA event because I was going for a round the world trip for various family occasions which were taking place. So I just came back about a month ago from 6 weeks tour, but I wasn't aware of the Commonwealth meeting. India, after the Arab invasion, which took place in 600 AD, somewhere in 642, the last Zoroastrian king of the Sasanian dynasty was murdered. And after that, the Islam was prevalent in the country, Iran and all the empire. As a result, many of the Zoroastrians had to leave, and they became the first refugees arrived in India. And they started prospering, working together with the local communities. And there's a large population of Zoroastrians in India, Pakistan. The second diaspora, second migration which took place of Zoroastrians after the independence, or even before the independence, because they were business people, they went to Hong Kong, England, and other parts, and there are a large number of Zoroastrians who came to United States and Canada was to study, and then they settled over here. Zoroastrian, there are about 35 to 40,000 guesstimated number of Zoroastrians in North America right now, which is even after the next generation, probably they might increase to more than what is in India, because the population is declining in India because of various reasons.
What's the total global population?
Well, there is the guesstimates are between 150,000 to 200,000. And now there are many people in Iran who consider themselves to be Zoroastrians, although they can't say that in Iran because it's a criminal thing to do. And even if the individuals want to adopt the Zoroastrian faith, their families will be affected. So there is quite a lot of propaganda taking place in Iran today, not to be identified as a Zoroastrians. There were quite a lot of converted families in Iran for centuries, which took place. Where various laws were passed, the Zazia law and others, and many of the Zoroastrians were converted into following the Islamic faith. Now they are coming out and saying, as the nations are progressing, in the sense that they can talk about Zoroastrian faith. Many people who come to United States and Canada just migrate, and they say, well, we have quite a lot of Zoroastrian faith in our family. We pray in darkness. And there's a large number of people in Kurdistan today. They claim that they had been praying in the caves and keeping themselves as Zoroastrian faith. Now they are coming out and identifying themselves. And Zoroastrianism has been a Kurdish community have now followed Zoroastrian faith. They themselves call Kurdish Zoroastrians in Kurdistan, in Iraq.
Iraq, yeah, I think it's legal to be Zoroastrian in Iraq, isn't it?
Yeah.
In Kurdistan.
So there is a large number. I'm not sure about when was the Commonwealth meeting.
It was on Commonwealth Day every year, March the 11th. Yeah. So next March the 11th, please come and get some of the Commonwealth members of the Zoroastrian community to attend.
Sure.
Yeah. It was online. We met online.
Okay. Because there's a large population of Zoroastrians in England.
I've been to Zoroastrian House in Hampstead, which is very close to Freud's museum, where Freud lived. Just down the road is the Zoroastrian House, and I took a bunch of Muslim students when I taught at the Muslim College to both. I took them to the Freud Museum, and then I took them to the Zoroastrian.
But that is moved now. Now it's now they're going into Riga property in Harrow.
Excellent.
There was an old cinema house near the station, and that has been converted. That was taken away, and has been converted into the new Zoroastrian house.
Okay. I've just got one comment before we move on about the Commonwealth Interfaith thing. I've been having a very interesting discussion with a student who's here visiting he's doing a PhD on Jungian approaches to Buddhism. And we've been talking about multi-faith identity, and I've coined the phrase polyfideism, which is a technical term for somebody that believes in more than one faith simultaneously. I believe, as a philosopher of religions, that that's the way to go. That instead of just being one thing stuck in one box, you know, I'm an Anglican Christian and that's all I am, and I hate everyone else, you know. No, I'm also an initiated Sufi and a Kabbalist and a yogi and a druid. And I don't, you know, as far as I'm concerned, there's no reason why we can't be polyfideists. I'm also a Zoroastrian at heart. I love Zoroaster.
You're absolutely right. So in India, there are, because of various reasons, the Zoroastrians, who are known as Parsis, they did not want the Parsis to marry an other faith community, and they did not allow. But
right.
But I'm sorry about that interruption. But in around here, especially in North America, there is a large number of people who have intermarried Zoroastrians, and we have always accepted, because there are always two faiths being concerned. You know, there's the mothers and fathers, and then they should be taken into account. And there have been large number. As a matter of fact, when I was a president of Zoroastrian Association of Greater New York, which is one of the member association of Fazana, I started a Zoroastrian intermarried group, so that they started exchanging and meeting at the various faith festivals of a different faith. So Hindus have, you know, if you're married Hindu, then it will be at the
that's lovely.
I
think that's the way to go. I think it's the way to go, is to encourage this.
We are prospering. We are prospering.
Polyfideism. Yeah.
This is one of the reasons the Indian population is going down, because there's no acceptance of intermarried individuals in Zoroastrians, in Parsis in India. This is one of the.
Okay, now I get what you're saying. Okay, thank you. That's great. And do you know, my question to you earlier that you didn't hear was, why has the Secretary General of Religions for Peace gone and we got a new one? We had a Muslim woman who was just appointed only a year ago, and suddenly we've got a new one. Do you know what happened? I mean, why has she resigned?
She actually, it's not a year ago. It was in 2019 in the World Assembly in, I believe, August. It took place in Germany.
In Germany,
It took some time to get her visa, because she was not a permanent resident of, her visa effective change. But she involved in really, she really made quite a lot of changes. And she had been working something like 25 hours a day in doing that, which had affected her health. As a result, she decided to take a leave and resign. This was 2019 to 2023, not in a 1 year, 4 to 4 years. It's been there. Okay. And the new Secretary General has been just appointed. You are right, Dr. Correa. And he will continue till the next General Assembly when it takes place. And at that time, the new decisions will be made.
Yeah, that's brilliant. Okay. I used to be Secretary General for Britain and Ireland for 10 years for Religions for Peace. And I've been researching the history of it. I just want to share a quote from Thich Nhat Hanh. Thich Nhat Hanh, a Vietnamese Zen master who lived in France, wrote a poem which he read out at the World Assembly of Religions for Peace in 1974. And I won't quote the whole thing. He said, "We have to learn to behave as if we're walking on flowers, even though we're walking on broken glass." He was someone who suffered the Vietnam bombings, and he always smiled, and he carried on teaching meditation here in France. So along with Thomas Merton and others. So Religions for Peace is important. I honor the work they do. And you, Homi, thank you. keep it up. And I wish this new Secretary General good luck. Yeah.
Thank you. Thank you.
Yeah.
Thank you.
Okay.
Just one more thing I'd like to add.
Yeah.
When I was in England studying there I'm dating myself, in 1962. I don't know whether you remember the march by Lord Russell, Bertrand Russell.
Yeah, I was there as a little boy. I was there.
I was walking in that march. I just wanted to say that.
Okay, I was there. Yeah, my mother was a CND activist. She took me on that march and pointed out Bertrand Russell when he was sitting down. He was arrested in Trafalgar Square. I remember it as a little boy. I must have been about 6 or something.
Yes, the march to Alderson. I don't know if you remember that.
Yeah, Aldermaston. Yeah.
Again, I was involved in that.
Amazing. Thank you. Yeah. Well, I've inherited Bertrand Russell's role as coordinator of Philosophers for Peace. So he was very active in his generation. I'm the kind of the guy on the job now, you know. Okay, actually, let me move to that next item on the agenda.
Thank you very much.
I know you've got another meeting. Yeah. Okay, go.
I'll read the report of the meeting, and thank you very much, everyone, for participating. I would like the next meeting. Thank you. Bye.
Thank you, Homi. Yeah, great. Let me just move on then and introduce our next topic, which is about the work of CND. It's still going, Campaign for Nuclear Disarmament. And there was a meeting on the 14th of March, which I attended online. It was run from the Parliamentary Committee for CND. And it was talking about the legacy of UK nuclear weapons testing, particularly in Australia and the Pacific Islands. And it was rather moving. There was an amazing ambassador, His Excellency Teburoro Tito, who's the ambassador from Kiribati to the UN. And I don't know if anyone's ever heard him speak or if you know of his work. He was absolutely, totally on the ball in terms of his incredibly polite, unbelievably diplomatic kind of chap. Has anyone come across this chap from Kiribati? He was basically saying the British absolutely screwed up with all these nuclear weapons tests. What we did is we blew up H-bombs on little Pacific atolls without even telling the locals. And so the locals got all the fallout, and they're still got these terrible health ill effects. And we also heard from academic, Dr. Betty Alexis Martin, who's academic who's specialized in this. She's got all the maps, she's done all the data, how many people have been hurt and wounded and still are. And it was chaired by a Labour MP, Ribeiro Addy, who's the vice chair of parliamentary CND. It was a very moving meeting, and it's online. If anyone is concerned about specifically Britain's nuclear weapons testing, but of course it was done in Russia, in Central Asia. It was done by America in the Pacific with disastrous effects. It was done even by France, also in the Pacific. So one reason for getting rid of nuclear weapons is just like we've got to stop doing all these kind of tests, and we've got to stop polluting the atmosphere with all this radioactivity that's pumped out, and we've got to do the cleanup. In my opinion, we've got to give funding to these communities so that they can rebuild their lives. You know, one of the tests was one of the H-bomb tests. A Japanese fishing boat was nearby, and that got all the fallout on it, and they're still, ill and dying. So, yeah, nuclear. I mean, I'm Bertrand Russell, of course, worked with Einstein to set up Pugwash, which has been trying ever since to get rid of nuclear weapons. My worry about the Ukraine war is that it's almost made it thinkable. You know, stupid media programs like Fox News are saying, "Oh, we're ready for a nuclear war with Russia." You know, it's like it's disgraceful, this way of thinking. I don't know what other people think, but I'd like to see the Pacific Islands become truly peaceful and turned into a peaceful ocean again. Has anyone else got any comments you want to add or on the nuclear weapons issue? I mean, how close are we? Do you mention this in your book, Sam, about the problems facing the world, redesign the world? Is getting rid of nuclear weapons in the book? And if not, why not? You'll have to unmute. We can't hear you. Sam? Maybe he didn't hear me. He's. Can you hear me, Sam? Can you unmute? Okay, Sean, maybe this is a good time to move and ask about Irish neutrality, because are you saying some people in Ireland want to join NATO, which is a nuclear-armed self-defense thing?
Yeah, thanks, Thomas. Yeah, it's a big debate, but it's bigger than, of course, Ireland. I mean, we're possibly at what we call the sleepwalkers stage. And The Sleepwalkers was one of a very good book about the build up to the First World War and the people in Europe sleepwalking into a disaster. And a lot of the peace people in Ireland and around Europe think we're probably at that stage again, because the European leaders, they're saying it out. It's not just Fox News, Thomas. The European leaders are saying we're planning a war with Russia within 3 to 5 years. I mean, they've been saying that. I mean, it's kind of insanity. And what they're doing is they're massively increasing the budgets for the military all over Europe. So that's why Ireland is getting dragged into this, because we don't spend very much on our military, because we have a very small military, and our main contribution is to peacekeeping over the years. So, I mean, what do we do as people who are aware that it may be in less than 3 to 5 years there could be a nuclear war in Europe? And I mean, are these people insane in the corridors of power of the European Union, of NATO, and of the United States? And the European Commission only yesterday, the day before, came out with a statement. This is very important to us as philosophers or whatever. And they said their reasoning is, if you want peace, prepare for war.
The old thing, yeah.
The old saying. And my immediate reaction to that goes back to Roman times, si vis pars parabellum, or whatever it was called. And for 2,000 years, it's failed. That ideology has failed. And here's the top European leaders in the last week saying, if you want peace, we have to build nuclear weapons, and we're going to, in fact, if I was a Russian, I'd say the war has already started. Now, regardless of your ideological position in relation to Putin, if I was sitting in Russia as a Russian citizen, I'd say, should the West have already started a war with us? They brought in sanctions which are incredibly amazing against a superpower or a main power, and they've done amazing sort of contribution to continuing the war with Ukraine, which possibly could have been stopped at some stage. But if the NATO powers are pouring in sophisticated weapons into Ukraine to kill Russians, if I was a Russian, I'd say that sounds like a war to me. So, I mean, how dangerous can the European political leaders be? We're definitely at a sleepwalker stage as far as
sleepwalking. Yeah.
No,
I hear you. That's wasn't it Koestler or someone wrote a book called The Sleepwalkers, I think.
Yes, yeah. I mean, it's an idea that's been, certainly it happened in the First World War, because a lot of the leaders thought they could control the situation. They could saber rattle for a while, and then when it suited them, they could pull back. But generally, in the fog of war, that we know that is a very dangerous.
Yeah. No, we're in a dangerous thing. Can I make one comment to what you're saying, Sean? Because in this video, in this program about the history of the Cold War, which I recommend people to listen on Netflix, there's a lot of interviews with Daniel Ellsberg, who was involved with something called the Pentagon Papers, and he worked for the Rand Corporation in the early in the 50s and up till the late 50s. And he was brought in on war plans for fighting Russia at the time. He had access to all these secret NATO and American USA war plans. And he reveals in the interview that he's giving that the American plan was, having invented H-bombs, in the event of a war breaking out, they were going to fire H-bombs on every single city in Russia and every single city in China. Now, these bombs would incinerate the entirety of a city like Delhi or, Bangalore, whatever, Hyderabad, or in Russia and China, Moscow, Petersburg, and so on. And when he saw these plans, he was so disgusted. He said, these people are insane. How can you sit there rashly and draw up war plans which will destroy millions of people? And he asked for estimates of the number of dead, in the event of a World War III, a nuclear war. And it was in the hundreds of millions. Anyway, he resigned, he smuggled out the documents, and he became a protester. And what I'm so shocked at is we're still there, I mean, I lived during the time of the Reagan-Gorbachev thaw. I thought the Cold War had gone to bed. I thought I was marching, against it. And I went to Moscow in 1990. I thought we'd got a peace agreement. We signed a treaty. And yet now it's come back. What I don't accept, though, is that it's all NATO's fault or all America's fault. I think Russia has a huge responsibility. And Putin personally and his entourage made a fatal miscalculation, But our problem is therefore what we can do about it. But I would say to my Irish friends, please stay neutral. Don't join NATO. Don't join this madness. You've got to stay as a peace voice, a bit like India, really, although India's a nuclear power as well. But, it's grim times. Okay.
Thomas, I'm sorry, I was on another call, so I couldn't really hear you.
Okay, I just asked a question, whether you looked at the question of nuclear. I mean, you said it's time to redesign the world in your book. And so my question to you was what do we do about nuclear weapons? How do we redesign the weapons arsenals?
We need to go beyond nuclear weapon. We need to really focus on nonviolence. The industrial complex driven by military needs to be basically tamed. US this year will spend another $1 trillion on defense. Now everyone is going to redo their defense industry to respond to drones and AI. So everything today is basically obsolete. It'll be another war with multi-trillion-dollar spending on developing new hardware and software. Because present hardware and software doesn't work anymore. You will need electronic fencing. You will need high-speed drones. You will need a lot of AI and, you name it. When I look at defense industry, I think 80% of the defense industry is obsolete.
But can we turn it to a peace technology, Sam? That's
what I'm talking about. So that's what I'm talking about. So how do you really divert that investment and say, this is the time to redesign defense industry, not give them money to build next generation weapon, but have a timeout. How do you get time out? Only through conversations on nonviolence. Otherwise the race is on. They want every country to spend 2%, 3%, 4% of their GDP on defense. And the whole conversation is on wrong direction.
Sure. And I read today in the papers that America's giving Israel another few $1 billion worth of weapons
There's no
to
end
drop
to
on
it.
Gaza. I
And
mean,
all these weapons is
the
obsolete.
wrong-
I mean, what are you doing with tanks and missiles and all this crap? Okay, you can just send 1,000 drones and kill everybody if you want.
no, but that's what they've been doing in Gaza, but killing everybody doesn't do anything. It doesn't
Crazy,
bring
crazy.
peace. Doesn't bring peace.
So
And
I would
surely
not
that's
want to
what we
have
should be.
conversation on nuclear disarmament. I would like to have conversation on non-violence, saying, look, guys, non-violence is a bigger idea.
Okay.
Okay. And
Yeah.
part of that is nuclear disarmament. Okay. But why are you fighting? For what are you fighting?
Once
So
we
it was okay.
elevate ahimsa within
And also,
each
I think it was okay when when people were fighting for resources. We today live in a world of surplus, not of scarcity. We can produce anything. What is that we want to produce? Who do we want to produce for? So this whole business of capturing somebody's resources. Now, when I look at all of the big companies, whether it is Google, Facebook, Apple, Exxon, they're all East India Company of the past. They're all multinationals with the idea of grabbing resources,
encouraging addiction.
Yes,
which is
yes,
what the
yes.
East
So
India
you got to
Company was
change
doing.
all that. You got to create
Yeah.
new corporate structure
Hmm.
where you are not just optimizing shareholder values and IRR, but you are optimizing stakeholder values. You need new structures. All these old structures are designed for East India Company.
Yeah. Yeah.
So there are larger issues, but who is ready to listen? Nobody's ready to listen.
Well, we've all promised to be listening here, and I want to move on because you've mentioned non-violence. I want to ask Shanti, whose name means peace, and who was at the International Conference on Peace and Nonviolent Action. She gave a talk about ahimsa, and she explained the inner meaning of ahimsa. Can you run that through us, Shanti, and show how nonviolence has has a depth to it that can help here. Over to you, please.
Thank you so much, Thomas. So the topic I spoke on was yogic lifestyle, 6 steps to nonviolence, peace, and oneness. Ahimsa paramo dharmaha. Ahimsa paramo dharmaha. Ahimsa paramo dharmaha. So meaning ahimsa, non-violence, is the highest duty, highest virtue. It is the core essence in us, in any being. So that is what dharmaha means. Now, why is there even violence? What is violence? So violence is violating the rights of others, the right of humans, plants, animals, planet. And why is there violence? So the fundamental reason we want to hurt others or the wars that we are talking about, it's because of the sense of separation. We all think that we are separate from another because we think different, we look different, we eat different, our faiths are different. And because of these differences, we think we are all separate. But are we really separate? For this, we need to understand the story of the gold jewelry. So the goldsmith sends 4 pieces of jewelry to the lady of the house: a bangle, earring, necklace, and a finger ring. Now each piece thinks it's different from the other pieces and also in a way superior and more useful to the lady than the other pieces. They totally forget that they all came from the same source, a lump of gold. And what they don't realize is this lady is not happy with the jewelry design, and she's going to send all the jewelry back to the goldsmith. And so there, all these 4 pieces are going to become one lump of gold again. They're going to lose their individual expression and identity. So in the same way, all of us have come from one source. And even science, Einstein has proved it through the E=mc² formula. So we have all come from that one big cosmic energy, and the energy, it has become matter, and that is how all of us exist, whether it's table, chair, woman, man, plants, everything is that one energy in different vibrations and frequencies. And if all this matter were to get converted again into one big piece of energy, then we all become just one. All this matter that looks different, all of us that look different, will all merge. We lose our individual identity. We have forgotten all this. So I explained the 6 steps using the acronym AHIMSA. So the first A stands for acknowledge the oneness as the truth. And now, what is yoga? So this is the original name in the Sanskritam language. It's not yoga, so it is yoga. And so the very word yoga means, it comes from the root word yuj, which means to unite, to join. So the very word is the path to oneness. It is the path to join and become one. So yogic lifestyle is the path to experience this oneness amidst all of us. And when this oneness has come, then that is where the peace, the happiness all exists. And that's where we call this one truth as also Satchidananda, Sat Chit Ananda. That means the very essence of this oneness, it is Sat, it is the truth. Because what really exists is this one thing, the one. All these differences are just illusory, because any moment this difference can merge into one. So Sat Chit, it is consciousness. So that higher energy is also the consciousness which has become different forms. And Ananda, it is in essence happiness. So if we can all live to even some extent with the feeling and with this awareness of the oneness, then there will be more happiness and more peace in everyone's life. So the second H, the H of the word Ahimsa, it stands for harness the power of this yogic lifestyle. And it may seem that it's very difficult to feel the oneness, because it is in every way we feel so different from the other in our thoughts and values and attitudes and behavior. So it's very hard to think the other person is one with me or it's the same. And for this, we need to understand the one aspect that we are living with every day, that is our body parts. Our body parts, see, sometimes my right hand hurts my left hand unknowingly, I roll the windshield and my hand is here and I am not even aware, and I just crushed my right hand, crushed my left hand. Is the left hand angry with the right hand? Does it ever want to hurt the right hand and take revenge? And once I was walking and I didn't see properly, I tripped and I broke my toes. Now, is my leg angry with my eyes and wants to take revenge? It never happens. They don't wage war, they don't hate, they're not, because they don't think of themselves as different from each other. They know that they all serve different functions, they look different, but they are all part of that one entity called the body. So these body parts have that intelligence and knowledge to understand that they are part of this one body. So, and we all have this body, our own body parts feel it. So how hard it is for us to think that all this that exists in the universe, they look different, but they're all part of that one big energy, the consciousness, the divinity, the intelligence, God, however we want to call. So this is an example that we have to keep becoming aware of this. Then living this oneness won't be so difficult. And so this yogic lifestyle, it actually forms the syllabus to experience this oneness. It's a very systematic syllabus given by the ancient masters. And of this, one aspect of this is the values. So we call it Yamaha, Niyamaha. So these are values, codes of conduct to experience harmony within and harmony with other people. So the third, the I of the word ahimsa is imbibe Yamaha, Niyamaha. So these values, imbibe them in life, then experiencing this oneness and forgetting this difference, this becomes much more easier because we are living that every day, that yogic lifestyle of which this becomes a part. And then there is one aspect of the yogic lifestyle, which is yoga asanam, which is what has now in the modern days become everything of yoga, but it is one small part, that is how to move the body. And so yogasanam, and this is a way not just to exercise the body, but to really impact the mind and the spirit, the atma, through the movement. The movement is just a tool, but the goal is really much higher. And so the fourth letter in the word ahimsa, that is M. So this is move the body yogically, because when we learn to do our exercise this way, then we are not just working on the muscles or the nerves, but we are really impacting the entire being, which in turn helps us to experience and live this non-violent way in our life, and to constantly remind ourselves that it is this one source we have come from. And then another aspect, that every day that we are all, every moment that we are doing because of which we are alive, that is our breath. And many of us don't breathe right. And because of this, a lot of, it impacts the mind also. So the pranaha is the word, and the branch or the element of the yogic lifestyle which addresses this, it is called pranayamaha. So prana is the life force, the chi, and ayamaha is elongating. So how to elongate and have control over this life force within us. So this comes to the fifth letter, which is yes, that is slow down your breath. Because even just not even learning big techniques in the pranayama, it's not even learning big complex poses in the yogasanam, but very simple poses and very, very basic level of breathing. Just those can really take us to a very higher level, because at the end of the day, non-violence, it's not just only about peace talks or conferences or resolutions passed. It is what actions we can take individually in our everyday life. Because if each one of us can take one step towards that, then as a community and as a world, then we move farther. So coming to the last letter, another thing that we do every day, that is eating. So we don't realize how eating and the food impacts not just the body, it's not just calories or energy, but it affects the mind, our attitudes, behavior. So food has a lot to do with that. And therefore, adopting a yogic vegan way of eating really impacts how we think and how we view our life and others. So these are the 6 steps that I had talked about, AHIMSA. And through these, we really take charge of our individual life, how we view others, our life, our interconnection with others in the universe. And through this, we are making tremendous progress as an individual, as family, as community, as a country, towards non-violence, peace, and this is the way that we can feel one. Yeah.
Yeah.
Thank
No,
you.
thank you very much, Shanti. That was brilliant overview. What was the last A? I know it was to do with eating. What was the A of the ahimsa?
A is the adopt a yogic vegan way
Okay.
of eating. Yeah,
Okay.
where we cause the least harm to everything. So where Yeah, it's a non-violent way of eating.
Adopt. Okay. No, thank you. That's a very clever way of redefining ahimsa. I'm sure people can come up with their own acronym. I had just a couple of comments. Firstly, you know, you emphasize oneness, that the essence of the yogic insight is unity, oneness. And as you're speaking, I'm just so minded that that is exactly what Islam says. The Muslims who are being bombed in Gaza, the Muslims of the Middle East, their whole scripture is about the unity of God, the divine unity. You know, and the metaphysics of Islam at its deeper Sufi and other interpretations, that's all about the exact thing you're talking about, oneness, Ibn Arabi and the other saints. And I just wondered, have you ever talked to a Muslim philosopher? Have you ever met any Muslim philosophers and talked about oneness or unity? I'd love to see you as a yogi talking to a Muslim intellectual. Have you ever done that?
Not to a leader. I mean, I have taught in a mosque, and the thing is, whenever I say, they say, oh, our religion talks about that. So I don't know whether in theory it is what it is, but it is misinterpreted, or when it comes to the people, it comes across differently. Because when we say like, oh, there is so much terrorism from this community, and then they say, no, like our religion doesn't speak of that. I haven't read Quran per se, so I don't have the authority to really comment on what it says. But this is what the Muslims say, that no, our religion also preaches the same. And,
Yeah, it does.
I don't know whether it's not really expressing itself in the way as a community the behavior is, because there's
yeah, I mean, this would make the subject of a fantastic kind of discussion. We've got to get some Muslim intellectuals to discuss unity with you and Jewish intellectuals, because they say the same. Their idea of God is the divine unity behind everything. So what we have on this planet is a ridiculous situation. We have warring unity factions arguing that their unity is better than the other guy's unity. Now, how ridiculous is that? Isn't it time to, like, shouldn't we grow up as a planet? Amina, you've got a hand up. Can you solve this problem of the warring unities, please?
Thank you, Thomas. I wanted to appreciate everything you said, Shanti, about yoga and nonviolence. It's fascinating. But I couldn't help but make a comment as a Muslim on this panel to the comment that you made that that your perception, or some people's perception, that a lot of terrorism comes from the Islamic community. And we hear that a lot. And what I like to say as a Muslim, I agree with what you heard from Muslims, that at the core of this, this religion is unity and love, in devotion and unity with all. A lot of what people refer to as violence, Islam has been around, as you know, I'm sure, for a long time, 1400 years. This issue of terrorism has been around just in the last 50 to 60 years. So it has nothing to do with the religion itself. So that's something that everyone has to be clear. This has nothing to do with the religion. It has everything to do with geopolitical issues. It's really a political issue. When the Iraq War happened, for example, out of that conflict, ISIS was born. It was born out of the conflict, the frustration of the people that were there. Not that it's justified, their behavior is absolutely appalling, but it came out of a political resistance movement, if you will. And also, if you look at Taliban, for example, I am from Afghanistan, and the Taliban movement was born out of the conflict, the Russian and US's involvement in foreign policy, who actually weaponized and created these groups who are completely radicalized. They have a very incorrect, they basically were taught an incorrect and violent version or interpretation of the Quran, and they were actually, literally created in a sense. And so these are really geopolitical issues. They were not there since 1400 years, and so I think it needs to be looked at not from a religious lens, and it's correct. And that's why I personally don't like the word Islamist, because just tying the a religion to an activity of a certain a limited number of people is completely, you know, it's over 2 billion people practice it, and to tie their whole religion to the activity of a few is just completely unfair and
Yeah, I mean, it would be
misplaced.
like complaining that all Hindus are fanatical racists because of the actions
right.
of the RSS, which is a minority
That's right.
of extremist
And
Hindus.
right.
Yeah.
Right. And there are Christian, you know, fundamentalists, and every religion there is that, you know,
Yeah.
group of people. And so just wanted to say that, just to clarify, to just not tie the religion to this. It is really a political issue. If you go to the root of it, it's really a political issue.
Yeah,
you
so
know,
thank
because
you.
I think, even in our own country, like before the British came and ruled us, so it was the Muslims who came and ruled, and so a lot of things have happened during the time where the local culture gets, you know, destroyed, and lot of forcible conversions. So I don't know, I mean, but this is not what the religion would have taught. Again, this may be a group of people who decided to invade and do this. And the thing is, they were doing it in the name of the religion, like quoting something. So that's why maybe it has gotten linked to that. But I don't know. Yeah. So it was for a long time, you know. So a lot of local things were all destroyed during the process, and there was kind of a change that happened in the country itself.
Yeah, that's colonialism. And like you said, any country that that practices colonialism, like what's happening to Israel and Gaza, they will be ruthless. And so that's, I personally am against colonialism, as I'm sure all of us here who are peace builders are, but it has to do with colonialism, again, not the religion. It's you know, just that colonial mentality of, this is my land, I own these people, and you know. So
Sure. Well, then we should blame Homi, because the first empire in the world was the Persian Empire, the Zoroastrian Empire. And if Homi was still here, we could blame him for everything, because the Zoroastrians conquered Greece, and it's been mayhem ever since. But I wanted to add something else to what Shanti was saying, just another reflection metaphysically. I'm listening to a talking book, which I found, of one of the most important texts of Kashmir Shaivism. I love the Shaivite tradition of Hinduism as a philosopher, right? It's very, very profound. And there was a chap called Kshema Raja, I think is his name, who lived in the 10th century in Kashmir, and who wrote this text called the Recognition Sutras. And it's a very, very deep and profound metaphysical study. And basically, where he's coming from, everything is a divine unity. Everything is Shiva. You, me, the Zoom screen, our sounds, our voices, everything is Shiva. But we don't know it. We don't recognize it. So how can we recognize that? That's what the Recognition Sutras are. They're a fast shortcut to realize the divinity within us all, within each other and within ourselves, as the key to peace. And they're very profound. They've just been translated by an American academic who's also a practitioner. So he's a scholar practitioner. What I would love is for someone like him to go and talk to an advanced Sufi in Iran or Afghanistan, or I've met some of them, who are saying exactly the same thing. Everything is Allah. Wherever I turn my face, there I see the beloved. You know, it's in all the poetry, right? Why can't we make peace at that level? That's what we're trying to do here with the World Intellectual Wisdom Forum. And then we can say collectively to the military types who are weaponizing the differences, we can say, no, stop that nonsense. You know, put your guns and bombs away. Let's disarm in the face of this collective unity. You know, so anyway, I just want to share that text. Do you know that text, Shanti, the Recognition Sutras? Do you know it?
No, I don't know that.
Okay, I'm going to send you a link because I think you would love it. It would give a real depth to your yogic teachings.
Actually, because I mean, see, it is, you were saying, you know, that revelation. So it is to get to experience that the whole Indian lifestyle itself is, of course, yogic lifestyle, which
Sure.
I only knew after I trained to become a yoga teacher. Until then, I didn't know, because it was so much imbibed into the lifestyle. I could not even, nobody tells that this is yogic lifestyle. But right from the morning when we wake up till we go to bed, so many things we do, it is to experience that divinity. So when we wake up, we thank the bed, or when we put the foot on the floor, we say, oh, the Mother Earth, we say a prayer and say, I'm sorry, I'm going to step on you and jump and litter you and do everything, so please forgive me. So it is to see the divinity. And that's the reason why even the different deities have animals as their birds. They're all their vehicles. Because when we now look at an elephant, we don't just think of it as an elephant. We associate it with a deity. Or when we look at an
Ganesh,
eagle, oh, this is the vehicle of Vishnu. Oh, the snake, oh, this is the ornament of Shiva. So no animal is really looked at something that is there to harm, but we look at everything with divinity. So, I mean, the whole system is to learn to see divinity in everything, in everyone, not just the humans, but all the living beings. So even the so-called inert earth, it is not inert. So to the mountains, to the rivers, everything is made sacred. It is to create that, to cultivate that habit of learning to see divinity in everything. So that is
Yeah.
what you were just talking about. Yeah.
Thank you. Yes. And just to say, the the text, the Recognition Sutras, begins with an invocation to the goddess of consciousness.
Thomas,
Yes.
sorry to
Go for it,
interrupt.
Sam.
I have to leave. I have another call. My
Okay. Any
apology.
last words, final thoughts?
No, I think we need to really have a longer conversation on how do we put this into action. We are having great conversation, but what do you do at the end of it? How do we convince others? We have convinced ourselves. We are talking to ourselves.
Well,
But
we
how do
write
get in the head
books.
of
We write books. You've been writing books.
Yeah, I also write books, but that may not be the ultimate answer.
I belong to a neighborhood chat line, and there was a Muslim woman that said, anyone like a Quran? And so I said, yes, it's a thematic English translation. It's in little paragraphs with titles. And she said, after you're done, I would love to sit down with you and answer any questions or concerns. I love that. And that's, I always believe, one heart at a time and see where it goes.
Yeah. So we need a plan of action, Thomas.
Sure. Well, okay, Sam, my only final thought to you is Peter Abelard, who founded the University of Paris, said intellecting is an activity.
Sure, I buy all that.
Thinking, no, but take it seriously. Serious intellecting is itself an activity. I'm reading a book at the moment about King Alfonso the Wise of Spain, who lived in the 1200s. He was the wisest king Spain ever had. He had Jewish, Muslim, and Christian scientists at his court in Seville and Toledo, translating books of Aristotle into Latin. He was a multi-faith sovereign. He was a Christian, a Catholic, but he was supporting, he honored intellect, right? And that, I think, is what we need leaders to be doing, to honor the work of intellectuals like us instead of military types. If I went off and invented a weapon that could vaporize cities, I'd be a trillionaire. But I refuse to do that. I won't prostitute my intellect to that. What we're trying to do is to find the intellectual path to peace, which is, what we need is more wise rulers. So,
but
tell your political leaders.
I say this because I have limited time.
Yeah.
That's why.
Sure.
We'll talk about it. Okay. Thanks, everybody.
Thanks.
I gotta go too.
Thanks, Sam. Sure. Okay. Any other points people want to raise? We've had an interesting conversation. Susan, did you want to say any final thoughts?
I was just going to say I have to go too. I'm off to an Indian festival. I keep doing cultural things as much as I can, you know, to keep deepening my understanding.
Yeah,
That's
and you've
wonderful,
been
Susan.
to yeah, and you've been to China as well, Susan, haven't you?
I lived in China, lived in Thailand. Again, the main thing is I always ask them to help me understand any cultural things before I teach there, you know. So I taught in a couple of universities and grade schools and at the Buddhist University. So, you know, they've all educated me and helped me through mistakes and whatever. I think that's the way to go. I'm bringing 5 different women from different cultures from my public speaking group, and we're going to go to a new age center that believes in oneness and everything, but I look at their congregation and it's all white people. So I spoke to their women's group last week and I said, can I bring people of color and different nationalities who grew up in China, Japan, and have at it? They are absolutely happy to ask any question under the sun.
That's great. Yeah. Okay. Well, have a fun Indian event. And thanks for your talk to the ICPNA as well. That was important. Yeah.
Thank you.
Okay, let's carry on. I want to move to the UN Summit for the Future, which is coming up in September. And you know, maybe Janet can say something about what's happening in New York, because in New York, in the World sort of Leadership Center, there's going to be the Summit for the Future. You know, where do you think, how can we input into that, Janet? Are your women's groups involved in those discussions? Are there NGOs?
Oh, absolutely. You, Nate Cabrera was saying when you commented on getting rid of the veto in the Security Council, she identified a number of groups that are working on that. And we formed a committee already from our little, our panel to go for that. I suppose it overlaps with the opening of the UN in September. Usually opens, the General Assembly opens, and the NGO, there's an NGO conference, parallel conference to the member state conference, and that's all I know at the moment. But yeah, we'll go farther with that. Maybe Elaine will come with me.
Yeah, I attended this. I want to report back. I attended this thing called MEGA with the former president of Ireland, Mary Robinson, was speaking. It was running out of Geneva. They've created this thing, Mobilizing an Earth Governance Alliance, which spells MEGA, and they're pronouncing it MEGA, which is like Omega. So there's a interesting sort of the Alpha and Omega coming together here. And they're talking about the climate emergency and how we humans need to get our act together for planetary governance. Elena Mustakova, who spoke to our group, I think last month, she has been involved in this. Alan Ware, who's a New Zealand peace activist, who's also spoken to our group a little while back. He chaired the meeting effectively, which was very impressive. It had, it's a coalition of civil society organizations working together, and the World Federalist Association is involved. There was a chap from London, I think called John Vlasto, who was speaking. So, that was quite important. I think we as the, wife should ally with this project. Have you heard anything about that in New York, Janet? Have you heard about this Mobilizing an Earth Governance Alliance?
I mean, these kinds of things have been going on in different forms with different names, with different coalitions all this time. The problem is power, the power thinking based on militarized security versus human security. And now we realize that human security is not enough. We need ecological security and the kind of oneness that Shanti is addressing. And so and I think this is a very important point about corporate power. You know, the United States has been one of the primary funders of the UN, and then they've pulled back. And it was obvious when Ted Turner, what's the name of his corporation? Suddenly there were televisions all over the UN headquarters in New York. And that signaled the time when they were vying for corporate support, which means corporate support is a kind of polluting or diminishing or diluting or misdirecting. So then tourism became a big topic at the UN. And I think it was undermining the political activism of UN NGO lobbying and lobbying leaders of countries. So I think this is another form of that. And one thing that, you know, Sam?
Yeah, Sam Petroda, yeah.
Yeah, he's, you know, action involves, it's very complicated to take our values, which we're all sharing here, the people here, to fight power. The power to dominate, the power to extract wealth, the power to control. And they have values that are different. Like, you know, they can kill us. They can send us to Siberia, et cetera, et cetera. So I think that's the point of action. And I think the UN has been much maligned because of the expectations. Well, the UN didn't stop this war, blah, 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 blah. But the UN as a forum is extremely powerful in terms of changing the norms across the world and having the kind of dialogues that you're having us have the kind of dialogues that you're calling for. Everyone here is calling for. So
I just want to compliment what you're saying by pointing something out I didn't mention before. The meeting that we did in homage to Betty Reardon, which Janet organized, it was really looking at revisioning security so that women's security is at the core of peace. And women's security means security for your children, for your educational schooling of the kids, for your economics, for your survival in the real world, for your ecological security. And somebody made the point that a lot of the extreme climate change ill effects are affecting women in low-lying countries where homes are being, you know, flooded and blown away and so on. So what the discussion was, where it went to, was if we're going to rethink what security is, then shouldn't that impact what we call the work of the Security Council? The highest organ of decision-making on the planet is the UN Security Council. But at the moment, it's not embracing these human dimensions of security. It's not talking about the right to have a non-violent life. It's not talking about, you know, genuine security that affects real people in the real world. I mean, all of us on this Zoom call, we're not expecting to have our doors broken down and to be arrested and shot. You know, we live securely, but there are many parts of the world where that's not that, like Haiti at the moment, or Yemen, or Ukraine. You know, people are going to sleep not knowing if they're going to wake up tomorrow. So how can the UN Security Council redefine its mission to provide genuine security for the planet? That was kind of what I was asking. And I think, I mean, Ireland could pioneer that kind of dialogue. If you choose to go on the peace path, which I sincerely hope you will continue, you know, let's really get the UN putting its thinking cap on and thinking, what is genuine security for everybody? It's not about building better weapons than the other guys. That leads to insecurity, permanent insecurity. So that was the conversation, which I think is we ought to be pioneering here, you know. And I'd be happy to work with your group. You said you set up a small working group, Janet.
Well, yeah, Mavic. you know, I'm less the bureaucrat, especially these days, but Mavic is a very much the Women, Peace and Security is the NGO that she is in charge of, along with Yasmin Galassi they're both from the Philippines, but everyone in that group who spoke has been part of these discussions with Betty for years, including, you know, there have been things written like the Amartya Sen and I forgot her name, the Japanese woman Okada.
She was very moving. She was brilliant.
Yeah, the human security paradigm. And then, you know, starting with sexism in the war system, the idea that domination and the way women are marginalized and
often violated in war.
Dignity distracted from them is completely enmeshed in the idea of military domination. And so human security, and I think we have to move from not just peace as the lack of wars or the diminution of violence, but peace as these relational, ecological relationships that are like Shanti, you spoke so beautifully about that are so ununderstood, like peace in every, I like Thich Nhat Hanh too, peace in every step. You know, he says, well, you know, maybe you don't want to wash the dishes, but once you put your hands in that soapy water, you know, it's a divine experience and it contributes to the community. It's a contribution. And so, you know, these things have been made for the marginalized people. You know, only those people will wash the dishes or clean the outhouse or, you know, whatever, these kinds of things. It's got to be, I mean, that's just so far from the generalized thinking or learning in school. Do we learn this in school? Yeah, how? It's a community. I mean, Elaine and I are in a group, a women's group. So my idea is to start lots of small groups, which are experiential. You know, when we said this is not a therapy group, it's kind of a support group, but we women learn and live in the community. We're all political activists.
You're breaking up, Janet. I think you're
or maybe
without the video, that each one of us have to figure out how we can contribute in this little group to make things go, address our needs and others at the same time. So that's, you know, that's human security and ecological security on the, you know, group practice level.
Yeah, no, that's very exciting. Thank you. I think you're thinking too fast for the Zoom. It can't keep up with you. It keeps freezing.
Oh, sorry.
It's all right. So
I can slow down.
it's poor old Zoom. We have to, you know, it's a bit slow today. But I want to just share something else, which is in Britain. We're having also a general election soon. We've been suffering from about 10 years of misgovernment by this Tory party, who essentially invented capitalism and slavery and colonialism. You know, so the Tories, I mean, they try and look nice on the outside, but they're poison when they get into power. And what we've seen them doing in the last 10 years in Britain is asset stripping the country. All the stuff that was socially nationalized by the Labour Party, everything like post offices and everything, has now been sold off to their companies, and they all sit on these private companies, make vast amounts of money, which they then park in the Cayman Islands. They take it offshore. So they've literally been doing broad daylight robbery on the British people. But fortunately, the good news is they're about to be kicked out because we still have a functioning democracy. And all the polls are showing the Tories are going to be about 3 MPs left, you know, at the next election. And the woman who's going to become the new chancellor is a woman called Rachel Reeves. She gave a very important speech recently to the City of London, City University, lecture on economics, and she coined this word. I don't know if she's coined it or, you know, it's been around. I hadn't heard it before. Securonomics, which is her way of describing an economics that provides security for everybody. So you don't have to be panicking about paying your rent or being kicked out by some shark landlord or having to choose between eating and heating your house, which many people in the poorer sector of Britain are having to do now because Brexit has impacted it terribly. So anyway, so Rachel Reeves said, look, the incoming Labour government is going to be getting us back to you know, this vision of the purpose of government is to provide security for all, not just for a few asset stripping, you know. So I just wanted to share that's good news, and it fits with what people have been saying on here, Janet and others. So Rachel Reeves is on our side, I'm sure, and I look forward to her becoming Chancellor. Yes, Amina, do you want to add? Let's just do a final go round and then we'll finish because we've only got a few minutes left. And it's been an interesting discussion. Amina, final thoughts from you. Shanti had to go, sadly.
Yes, no, I enjoyed everyone's perspective. Thank you so much. What an engaging and great discussion. I really liked, and I wanted to point out to Shanti what the analogy she gave of the body parts not fighting with each other was great. I love that. I didn't get a chance to tell her that, but that was great. Also, I put on my shirt, the Good Trouble shirt.
The Good Trouble.
Okay. I typically wear when we go for congressional advocacy for the Department of Peacebuilding. Just wanted to say that a lot of great things happening basically right now at the National Department of Peacebuilding Committee. We just ended, we're in the middle of actually our season of nonviolence, which starts from February to April. And it is bookmarked by Martin Luther King and Mahatma Gandhi's death anniversaries or celebration, basically. We had over 20 congressional meetings in the past 2 to 3 weeks. So we do a big advocacy push during this season of nonviolence. And so we did that, and we did about 22 meetings with various congressional offices and was very successful. We got one additional co-sponsor and working on a few. So that's been very busy time for us. And we're also trying to garner a hearing or a briefing with members of Congress. We're working with Representative Jim McGovern and Barbara Lee, who's the main sponsor of the bill, to make that happen, and that should be great news. And another great news I wanted to share, and I know Susan, I believe, mentioned Dennis Kucinich, who was actually the who's the member of Congress who introduced this bill back in 2001. So he hasn't been in Congress for the past decade, but he joined as an independent. He's actually running a campaign. So Susan might be really happy about, I'm not sure that she knew, but she mentioned Kucinich. So we are very excited at the Department of Peacebuilding campaign that he was kind of the father of the bill, if you will, and he's joining Congress again. And the hope is that with Barbara Lee now gone or leaving Congress, we can hopefully have him probably take his bill back. We don't have a say in that, but hopefully that's the hope. So we're excited about that.
Is he standing for Congress in Hawaii or where?
No, actually, he's running as an independent. Yeah.
Right. Interesting.
Running as an independent, though, not in Hawaii. He's in his
Ohio.
state is Ohio, exactly. Ohio. So for the state of Ohio, but he's running not as a Democrat this time. He's running as an independent, which I think suits him well.
I just want to say thank you to Amina for all her hard work with this project, which is to create a Department of Peacebuilding in the US by law, by a bill, which is on the floor of the House. And I gave a talk to her group a little while ago, which was recorded. I can share that recording. Thanks for sending it, Amina. And it gives people a good overview. I've also been working with your friend Elva Roy to get the architectural department at Texas University.
She's not on our committee. She doesn't serve on the committee, but she's a grassroots advocate. She shows up to some of our advocacy meetings. I'm so glad that you were able to find, she had the connection with the architect, so great.
Yeah, so what we're trying to do, I mean, for those that aren't aware, I don't know if Janet, if you know this project, it's to create what I call a nonagon, which is a 9-sided building. The vision is that it would sit on top of the Pentagon and it would house this Institute of Peace Building, this Department of Peace Building, officially as part of the US government system, with as much clout as the Department of Defense has in the Pentagon. So it's like the people's response to the Pentagon, sitting on top of it as a kind of architectural bit of icing on the cake. And so I gave a talk about it. I'll send you the link, Janet, and we're going to try and get these architectural students in Texas to do designs. The idea is it would be a glass building, it would be transparent, it would be beautiful to look at, it would be everything we think peace ought to be. And it would be working 24/7 so that America doesn't have to keep going to war. I think, who was it? It was Sam said America's spending trillions on weapons. I want that to stop, you know, because it's just a waste of your money and the world's money. The Pentagon is the single biggest money spinner on the planet. It spends trillions of collective wealth on what, you know? So the Department of Peace Building would be preventing the wars before they start, making friends with every nation. And my vision is that America should sign a bilateral peace treaty with every nation on earth, that they will not attack each other, like a non-violence treaty. Like, we will not invade Afghanistan and you won't invade us. And that includes terrorist stuff. We won't undermine you and all that. And then we can then disarm genuinely, you know. So that's what we're working on, this nonagon project, which I can send people. I gave a talk about it. And Amina, I mean, I'm hoping we can collaborate on that, you know.
Yes, and so I've put it to the committee, and there's a lot of projects, to be honest, going on. I'll send you an email with more details, but
sure,
it is being put on the agenda for our upcoming monthly committee meeting this coming Wednesday. Everybody obviously is in support of your project and would love to help and support in any way. There's a few competing projects going on, but I'll send you an email. And once the discussion happens this Wednesday in our committee meeting, I'll get back to you with more.
I mean, one issue was the name. I call it the Department of Peace. You guys call it the Department of Peace Building. You know, that's just.
I mean, it started out the Department of Peace. Actually, that the original bill was Department of Peace, but Barbara Lee, when she took over, she's the one, and really the sponsoring member of Congress has a lot of say, or all the say,
sure.
What it should be called or what the language should be, and so she decided to call it Department of Peace Building.
Yeah, I mean, I'm not attached to it either way, but you know, I just want the damn thing to get built, please.
Yeah.
Is Barbara Lee standing down at the next election?
She is. Well, she ran for a Senate, an empty Senate seat for California. We were rooting for her. We advocated for her, but unfortunately, she didn't win that seat. So what if you run for a seat in Senate and you're in Congress, you have to give up your seat. So she was forced to give up.
No.
Yeah. But somebody, yeah.
Hey, that's politics.
Yeah, but
well,
we're hoping that either Jim McGovern, who's a big peace advocate, one of the biggest peace advocates, I'd say, besides Dennis Kucinich in Congress, and then or Dennis Kucinich. So we're waiting until the next Congress to see if Dennis comes on board. Hopefully, again, we don't have a say in that. We can't pick the campaign because we're a grassroots movement. We're all a bunch of volunteers. We can't tell who should be the sponsor, but we're hoping that they can work among themselves with Barbara Lee's office.
And don't forget, my final suggestion to everyone involved or listening is we should get politicians to swear an oath to tell the truth as part of when they're signing in.
Right.
And if they break that, they should have to leave office, whether they're an MP, a congressperson, a senator, whatever, you know, whatever level of political governance. I think truth is the key. And I would just say to Shanti, that to me, the yogic lifestyle, the essence of it is truth, satya, that's why Gandhi called nonviolence workers like we are satyagrahis. We hold on to truth. You know, that's the most important thing we can do. And so to answer Sam, what can we do? Well, just don't let go of the truth. You know, that's the key thing. But anyway, look, it's been a pleasure to be with you all, share this time. And we've got some interesting people lined up to speak next month. And have a happy Easter. Yes. Let's you know, Christ spent a lot of time hanging out with the poor, the disadvantaged, the disabled, the mentally ill. You know, he was a teacher who was prepared to share his wisdom with everybody, you know, the less able. And I think that's a symbol of what we all are trying to do here. So thank you for all your work that you've done over the years, all of you. Keep it up. Yeah.
Thank you so much.
Thank you, Thomas. Thank you.
Yeah.
Thank you. It was nice to meet you, Shanti and Janet. I met you guys for the first time.
Yes, me too.
Okay, blessings.
All of you.
We'll
Thank you.
continue.
Thank you, Thomas. Okay.
Thank you.
It's my duty. Thank you.
Bye-bye now. Bye-bye.
Ciao.